you guys doing out there? This is Tanya coming to you from Redondo Beach, California. Wanted to welcome you to another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we know the best leaders are lifetime learners. They do not rest on their laurels, don't think they know everything. They're always trying to gain more insight. They do their research, they read up, they go back to school, and some of them write books. They write books to help the rest of us become lifetime leaders. Today, I'm bringing you someone that really represents a solution to a problem that many of us have. We've experienced it or we've watched someone experience dealing with aging family members that are dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's. We know how tough that can be. If you haven't experienced it yourself, you've watched someone experience and deal with it, many times always leaving us feeling like we haven't done enough, or we're not patient enough, or we're not, um, as gentle with the situation as we should be. Or what even is that? Where should we lie in this process of trying to figure out how to take care of someone that is slowly forgetting who they are and forgetting who you are? Today, I'm going to bring you Miss Patricia Boswell. She has written a book, and we are about to talk about it. So, hey, Miss Patricia, how are you?
I'm fine, Tanya. Thank you for
Awesome.
having me on.
Listen, I'm excited to have you on because you are a solution to a problem that many people have. Um, the book and why you wrote it and the experience behind you deciding to take the leap and put it all on paper.
Well, I wrote the book because I was in the business world, and decided to come back into the nursing world in 2008. And I had not been in the nursing world in over 20 years. And when I came back into the industry, I was just baffled how so many things had not changed and how people weren't able to advocate for themselves like they should. And then I was working with patients with hospice and patients with dementia. And I was like, and I was seeing family and friends, and I was like, this got to be a better way to do this. So as time progressed, I continued to work with people and run a business at the same time, working with patients, clients. So it was like a 360 every day. But really, what I was trying to accomplish, and I think I have accomplished this through my book, Caregiving with Love and Joy, is the fact that people can enjoy caregiving at home and how to actually do it where it's not as stressful because there's a plan, there's solutions, and to be proactive instead of reactive, and to be out of denial when you see things and you know it really isn't the person that you've known. You're seeing things like forgetting the keys, but what the keys are for, forgetting using post-its on the wall, not for just two people, but basically for the whole phone book, repeating themselves and forgetting little things that become into big item tickets as far as safety and how they communicate with you, or they go to a particular appointment but they don't remember everything about the appointment. And so when you get to that point, you have to say to yourself, something is wrong with my loved one. So that's why I wrote the book, because I felt people were very stressed out with this disease, and they were in denial because you know a person one way and you see them declining in another way. And then eventually they're not going to even know you or themselves. And it gets harder and harder. And it's so depressing and frustrating about what you need to do, because there's no roadway that's straight ahead. It has a curve, and you have to be able to maneuver yourself around the curves and up the mountain and down the mountain, I like to say.
Let's start from the beginning. What kind of nurse are you?
I am an LPN, and I explained that in the introduction, that I went to school to be an RN, and then I decided that when I went to get my bachelor's, that I was not going to practice. I was really into business, and I have a manufacturing operations background. So when I go into any kind of environment, the first thing I think about is processes. whether it's the health field, automobile field, anything, there's always has to be a process. So when I started looking at this, I noticed there really was no process,
Mm.
where there could be. And so that's why I really say a lot of times I'm a nurse with a business degree, because I use business in nursing and nursing in business, because even in business, you have to assess and observe. And in nursing, you have to assess and observe. And you still have to understand how to maneuver around and deal with people and have customer service. So that's what I did. I took everything, all my experiences, and put it into one pot and sort of like not mixed it up, but used the different tools where they were needed. So that's what I'm about, and that's how I got into coming back into nursing. So
And
to answer your true question, I became a hospice nurse, which
mm,
hospice leads you to other diseases, and I saw more and more Alzheimer's patients while I was on hospice, because that's one of the diseases that you can go on to hospice. And a lot of times people think you go on to hospice and it's your last 6 weeks, but you can go on hospice way before it's your last 6 weeks. So sometimes people get better and they get kicked off because they're getting good care. And I always like to explain that to people.
wait a minute. So you can come off of hospice?
Yes, you can come off a hospice and you can go back on hospice. Let's say you're on hospice and a new clinical trial comes out. You can go on that clinical trial, and if it doesn't work, you can come back on hospice. Every state is different. It's federally funded, but you need to find out how your state is managing the hospice system.
Now, with dementia and loved ones, it can get a little hard for many people, and I've seen this, to actually acknowledge that something is wrong
Yes,
and take those steps to make that appointment, to get those tests done, to get that result, because obviously they're afraid of what that really means. So I want you to talk the audience through recognizing triggers and opportunities for them to catch this early, and how to not feel bad about that. Like, I think there's a level of, I don't know if I want to call it guilt, or you don't want to feel bad if that's really not what it is, because maybe that's not what it is. But people are so reluctant to take it there. Talk the
right.
audience through that.
Okay. Well, let's use an example of, because it's usually this particular person. It's the children and the parent. And one thing about having dementia, Alzheimer's, you become the parent, and your loved one is now depending on you to be making good decisions for them. Even though they haven't told you, they're showing you. They're giving you little bits and pieces of more control over their life, because they know they can't do it. So they're putting their trust into you to help them get through the day, the night, the week, the month. And all of that starts to add up, because they know that something is going on. But usually, the person that is, before they really realize they're the caregiver, they're not recognizing that they are the caregiver, and they are in denial about what they're seeing. And they're saying, oh, my parent is getting old. Maybe that's what's going on. But people who are getting old do not have to have dementia or Alzheimer's. I know plenty of people in their 90s and very close to 100 that do not have dementia and is very physically fit, can dress themselves and do a lot of things for themselves. But when someone has dementia and Alzheimer's, they tend to become a little bit of a hoarder. They tend to rely, like I said,
Mm.
on the person they think they can trust to be the caregiver, and also the person they think they can maneuver or manipulate that trust, so that they are not diagnosed and that they're in denial along with them. The person that has this dementia and Alzheimer's, they know something's going on. Everybody knows there's something going on with themselves. But you have to recognize and say to yourself, this is not right, and move to the next level. And people have a hard time doing that, especially children. They have a hard time. They're adults, they raise their kids probably, but they have a hard time transitioning into being what they would be now considered a parent, a caregiver, an advocate for their parent, because they've always had their parent doing it for them, and now the roles have changed, and it's very difficult for a lot of people.
Our guest, one of the viewers wanted to ask, what do you recommend for families with loved ones that are combative? And does that usually come towards the end or once it has matured?
It can become early on. And that's why in my book, I talk about having a team and having a plan. Because in the book, it teaches you how to do these things to be proactive, not reactive. Because if you're starting to see a person that's becoming more combative, confused, doesn't want to answer the questions, you have to step back and say to yourself, something's not right, and you have to coach them into going to a doctor's appointment and having an evaluation. And if a loved one is in their 70s or 80s, they should be going with another family member that has the third ear, because a lot of doctors really do not know how to talk to someone who has dementia, certain questions, and they can't comprehend when they go by themselves all the things that a doctor is saying. So they really need a person that has a third ear and is clear, so that they can decipher what's going on. But you have to be out of denial. You have to recognize there's an issue with the person you love.
So I want to tell you a little story. My grandmother, I knew it was coming because the women in her side of the family have it. So, one, is it hereditary or did I just pick up on that? And two, how do you suggest that you have the talk with the rest of the family? Because even being diagnosed, I still had relatives that were in denial. Like, no, that's not what it is. It must be something else. She must be tired. They found 1,000 different what other things it could have been. But my question would be, is it hereditary? And how do you communicate that to resistant family members?
Well, I believe there is a gene. It's not totally confirmed, but as um, as I have seen family members in one family where everyone had it, all the siblings had it except for the male siblings,
Mm.
and that tells me there that that's a gene. But one of the problems as African American and minorities, we do not go to clinical trials. And so there's not enough research in regards to us. And we need to step up to the plate and go to your medical center or look online and put in clinical trials for dementia. There's a lot more now, and see where there is a clinical trial for your area. And some of it is just questions, some of it might be a blood test. But in order for us to really find out and find a cure, we need as much information as possible. So I'm saying that yes, it could be generic, but when this person and the loved one is gathered and is in the center, and you have 10 other people that are going to be part of the team, everybody has to be on the team. So you need to find out exactly what is holding this person back, or two people who are, have this thought that it's not what you think it is. Even after you get the diagnosis, they're still not convinced. But if you haven't gotten the diagnosis and gone to see a neurologist and had as many tests possible that can relate to this disease, and you get a clear diagnosis, then you know that those two people or that person can't be part of your team in the very beginning, because this disease requires you to have a team in order to survive. You cannot be a caregiver by yourself. It will burn you out, it will depress you, and you will see yourself having different ailments because of being a caregiver.
I have I have my own thoughts on why people would not want the diagnosis to be what it is. Has a lot to do with not wanting to take responsibility or do the work that needs to be done once they're diagnosed. I mean, I could be wrong, but I doubt it. And then with that, you talk about the preventative things or the proactive things that you can do with when it comes to this disease. For those people that are afraid to actually acknowledge it, mm, what are some of the your best recommendations on getting ready to deal with this? Right? So I'm scared to go to the doctor. Whew. But if I find out that my mama got dementia or my grandma got dementia, I'm going to put these things in place so that I'm ready to help her or him. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, that's what I've been saying about being proactive. You know, you're going to go get you're going to receive this diagnosis. And what is the first thing you're going to figure out is, how can I be the best caregiver for this individual? So you need to know your stress levels, you need to know where you are in your life, what support that you're going to need. Are we going to be able to move that individual into my house? Is that individual going to stay in their house for the next 6 months to a year? And let's say they decide to decline, let's say they decline faster than you plan. This disease requires no denial and a good plan. And I think one of the things to get that person on board is to educate the person little by little, so that they can see that you're on the right track. You might not be able to use this person, like I mentioned before, in the very beginning. They might need to be on your second team, but your first team, so that you're not stressed out and then so you can figure it out, should be the people that you can really rely on, because you might still have to go to work. So you're going to need support, not outside support, and inside support. So I suggest to anyone to sit down with the with the with the players that would be involved and lay it out with as much information, because if you come to the table with the information and you can show people this is what's going on, and to use your community in your community, there's support, there's all kinds of different support. Utilize that support, but it requires everyone to sit down and educate themselves so they can be an advocate. And not only that, people need to understand, whether you have dementia or Alzheimer's, at some point you're going to need a caregiver as you age. So everybody needs to understand what the responsibility is for a caregiver, and who do you want that person to be. And you might have to change that person in your lifetime like 2 or 3 times, because things happen as you go through your journey of life. Some people can handle responsibility. Some people are very good at responsibility, but they wouldn't be very good as a caregiver. And you might have moved to California and now you're in New York, but your family's in California. Are you going to move back to California? Are you going to have a long distance caregiving, which I don't suggest, because people cannot be managed long distance. I've seen it, I've worked it, and it does not work. So people also need to understand, someone has to move, and who's going to make that sacrifice. And I think it should be an early on conversation, not when there's a crisis. And the crisis to me is when if you're going for a diagnosis, that means you've seen things for quite a while, and now you're at the point of what I call reacting instead of being proactive. And I think if families start having the conversation before anybody gets sick, then as things do develop, it's become second nature to everybody. Oh, we need to do this, we need to do that. And then it becomes part of I don't want to say a tradition, but everybody knows what we need to do next.
Right. Is there something or conditions, are there conditions that speed up dementia and Alzheimer's, that speeds up the process? And is there medications and things that you can do that can also slow down the process?
I talk about that in the book, and when you do your research, I cannot say to you, use this particular medication or use that particular medication, because it really is becomes an individualized situation. People have allergies, people don't respond well. So my suggestion is that you do your research. Maybe the person, your loved one, needs an antidepressant. Maybe they need a medication that specifically is designed for dementia. But as we know, there is no cure and there is no medication that is going to make it go away. It might slow down the process, but from what I can see, it doesn't slow down that much from my experiences, because everybody is individualized and there could be other issues with their health. Some people might have heart disease, some people might be a diabetic. So you have to look at all these different variables when you're trying to care for your loved one. My aunt, who I mentioned in the book, physically fit. She was really, she could run a marathon, and she was she had dementia, but she could get up and move. She was like eight. She died at 85. I started caring for her at 82. But I swear to God, she could walk, run, and jump. She showed no signs of arthritis. It was always amazing to me, but I always felt bad because her mind was going and she couldn't remember and do things that she loved, and she was physically fit. And then you have some people who aren't physically fit. So it's very, very individualized. And that's how you have to put your plan together. As I mentioned in the book with the heart, the planning of the heart and knowing the story of your loved one. Because and when you're giving care to someone, it's so important to really understand that person, because then you can relate the care and the activities and the timelines to their personality that makes it better for you. And then you put in the plan your time off, because you have to have self-care. I talk about in the book, I show different exercises. I have a video where you can go to a particular site and look them up. It's really, this particular book really covers everything that you might ask, but if it's not there, it triggers you to go do more research to make it fit to your needs. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want you to talk a little bit more about your book and what that process was like. Was it difficult for you, or was it just, you get started writing and it's easy for you to flow because the information is so top of mind?
Well, I tell people I had to be really, really focused, because it wasn't like a creative book in a lot of ways where you're writing a love story or a mystery, or you had a dream and you're elaborating on it. These were experiences, observations, but also a lot of research and facts. So the process was um, lengthy, because I wanted to make sure I gave the best information and utilize like I said, my experiences with the information. So the process of the book definitely took, just the research and the proposal, like 2.5 years. And then we had COVID in between doing all the writing. So, things change a little bit, slow down, sped up, and then you have the process of all the editing. But I have to say, my team at Penguin Random House was excellent. I had no issues at all. And the thing about it is, you have to understand who you are as a writer. What are you good? So there's so many different ways. You can talk it, you can write it, you can verbally talk your book for a while, because it is exhausting just doing it one way. And for me, I had to do it a few variety ways for me to get my information on the paper, because it was also, like I said, factual, and it was also experience.
Right. So let the audience know where they can get the book and how they can keep up with you.
Okay, well, you can send me emails at caregivingwithloveandjoy.com, and you can also buy the book at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, um, all the platforms, audio, all the platforms online, um, Books a Million, and also you can purchase it Audible and Kindle. The book is, like I said, very, very informative. And I hope that people really do read it, because I think as you're reading it, this is the response that I've received since the book has been launched, is that they visually can see themselves in the book,
Mm.
and they can relate to the book, and it's triggered more information. It's an easy read. It's not like you're reading a medical book. It's not to make you feel guilty. It's not to make you feel like, oh wow, I should have did this, or maybe I should have thought about that. No, because you don't know. And this is a disease that, like I said, you might have one loved one that was very agitated, they hallucinated, and you might be on your second loved one now, and they're as calm as can be. You can tell them to sit down, and they like music, and they can sit down and do games. Their attention span is still good. So you can't say what you did for one is going to work for the other. That's why it's very important to understand who it is you're caring for.
I love that. Well, I want to thank you for spending time with us today on Leaders and Learners. I want to thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge, your expertise, your information, and your love for people
Yes.
in this book. Because at the end of the day, to be a caregiver, you have to have a level of compassion that does not, uh, everybody ain't got it. Okay. Everybody
No,
ain't got it. So
no, no. And
I
not, like we talked before, not everyone can really, hold someone's hands or rub their back or rub their arm and say, sit down here, and because it's very taxing to do this every day.
yeah.
And again, if you're going to be a caregiver, think about yourself too. Like when you're on an airplane and they say get the oxygen first and then you can care for somebody else. Don't feel guilty about taking that time off so that you can go exercise or to go out and have a meal with a friend, because you don't want it to be a 24/7. And then the next thing you know, you're laying up there half dead and they're looking over you wondering what happened, because that happens all the time. The caregiver goes before the person and the patient or the loved one, and they're like, then you gotta, then you have a whole nother family member that's caring for this one person, because you never know, when people are getting good care, they can outlive you.
Yeah. Good enough. Well, thank you so much for being here. And all that information will be in the captions of the podcast. And
Hmm.
we definitely support you once a member of the Leaders and Learners family, always. So anytime you
Thank
have
you.
something going on, if you decide to tour or anything
Mhm.
like that, we want to make sure that we are here to support you and make sure we get the good word out to the good people and continue to educate our public about
Yes.
caregiving, Alzheimer's, and
And
dementia.
remember that this month is Brain and Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and November is Caregiving Month. So
Yes,
make sure you're prepared. Order the book and send me a message. I'll answer any questions,
I
because
love
it's
that.
not it's not it's not easy. It's not easy. And
Well,
I don't
thank you
mind
so much.
sharing.
Yep. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Bye. Peace, love, joy.
All right, guys. So listen, the all the information will be in the caption. It's important that we heed this information. A lot of people don't share this, even though there's a lot of people that experience it. They do not share their experience for whatever reason. Maybe it was just too heavy. Maybe they felt like they didn't get it right in a way that their knowledge is important. But life experience and the stories that we share are important and they help empower other people. So please take the time. Get the link in the captions is where you can get the book. Support Miss Patricia Boswell. She is a nurse. She does this for a lifetime. She knows a lot about this, and you can always reach out to her for advice. Part of being here is knowing that you have experts that you can reach out to for some of the things that we go through in life, or else why would we have them here, right? So, leaders and learners, we have leaders here. We're all learners. We're learning from them. And you have the opportunity, whether it be now or in the future, to utilize her as a resource. That's why we're here. So, thank you for being here. Of course, if you need anything, Tanya McKenzie PR on all social media platforms. You can DM me here, whatever you need. We are here to support each other to continue to be amazing leaders and learners. So until next time, take it easy.